On a hillside in rural Turkey, a team digging at a Roman amphitheater exposes the entrance
İniyorum.
to a mysterious chamber.
Şimdi yavaş yavaş bunun üstündeki bu dolgu toprağı bizim almamız lazım. Çünkü yıkılma riski tehlikesi var.
These archaeologists are hunting for clues that could reveal the scale of this buried megastructure
Toprak dolgu var ama şurada tam kenarda
and the terrifying reality of Rome's superstars, the gladiators of the Colosseum. The Colosseum, ancient Rome's arena of death. 2,000 years ago, countless warriors fought and died here, all in the name of entertainment.
The Romans were really obsessed with gladiators. They were the rock stars of their time.
Why did these bloodthirsty games hold such sway over the ancient Romans? Who were the people at the center of this infamous spectacle?
Coming down into the arena, would have suddenly found themselves surrounded by spectators and the clamor.
Today, teams of archaeologists across the Roman world are searching for answers, digging through centuries of earth, and armed with the latest technologies, they're on the hunt for the truth about Rome's gladiators. At the heart of the Roman Empire is the largest gladiator arena in history. The Colosseum, one of the most iconic symbols of Rome. Chief architect Barbara Nazzaro is in charge of maintaining this enormous amphitheater.
Every year we restore some parts and we work to preserve this very delicate monument for the future, for the next generations.
This mighty megastructure is an extraordinary feat of architecture. It is 150 feet tall, took engineers 8 years to build, and contained 750,000 tons of stone. Inside, the arena could seat up to 50,000 spectators. On its completion, Rome had never seen anything like it. Emperor Titus Flavius opened the Colosseum in 80 CE, treating his citizens to the greatest show on earth. Exotic animals were paraded through the arena and released to attack each other or be killed by hunters. The stars of the show were the gladiators, who engaged in brutal combat, using different armor and weaponry. The opening games saw thousands of men and animals die and lasted for 3 blood-soaked months, cementing the Colosseum as the emperor's gift to his people. The Colosseum became the benchmark for the classic Roman amphitheater. But 2,000 years on, the remaining ruins look very different to the arena where gladiators fought to the death.
What we know about the Colosseum now is that something that's incomplete.
In the Middle Ages, Rome's citizens plundered the Colosseum's walls for building materials. In the 12th century, what was left became a medieval fortress. And today, steel bars added last century to strengthen it are now rusting and splitting the stone.
It's a very fragile monument. It looks so big, enormous and strong, but it is not. I see a very, very big crack that goes through both the bars.
Yes, the level of corrosion is very high.
It's very rusty.
Yes, it's very rusty.
Barbara assesses how to halt the rusting and preserve what's left of the Colosseum. So much evidence of the lives and deaths of its gladiators is now lost, and archaeologists are now searching further afield for missing pieces of the puzzle. "900 miles from Rome lies the ancient town of Mastaura in Turkey. Archaeologist Sedat Akunas is gearing up to undertake one of the biggest Roman excavations in the country in years.
Biz Mastaura Antik Kenti'nde ilk çalışmalara başladığımız zaman kent hiçbir zaman daha önce çalışılmamış ve bilinmiyordu.
Standing proud, high above the rest of the settlement, is the unmistakable outline of an amphitheatre. Unlike the Colosseum, this site has been untouched for centuries. The sands here could have preserved incredible discoveries, and Sedat is on a mission to find them. Much of this site is buried, so he uses two technologies to make a precise map of the hidden parts of the structure. First, he sends his team's drone up to scan the area.
Kalkacağız, ben göstereyim. Sen kaldırdıkça ben diyeceğim. Kaldır. Okey. Az daha.
The drone's LiDAR sensor captures the details of the terrain, while another team prepares a satellite positioning system that will map out a series of reference points. Sedat guides the team in plotting out a range of measurement positions.
Bu şekilde böyle 1, 2, 3, 4 diye böyle devam ederek ölçerek geçeceğiz, tamam mı? Şimdi şuradan başlayalım.
They record each point's exact coordinates. Eventually, thousands of points will create the first detailed 3D map of this area.
Buraya sen orada dur. O uçta dur. Dik açıyla tut. Tamam mı? Şimdi bu taraftakiler açığa çıktı. Buraları aldık. Şurada şu alan açığa çıkmadı. O alan açığa çıkmadı. Yani bak. Hadi gidelim şimdi.
Combining these two modern survey techniques replaces months of painstaking mapping work. It gives Sedat enough information to understand the terrain and the layout of the structure.
Eğimli bir arazi burası ve o arazinin eğimini Roma mimarı mühendislik becerileriyle en iyi şekilde kullanmışlar.
Soil and vegetation still obscures most of the structure. But scanning helps reveal the true outline of this amphitheatre for the first time in more than 1,000 years. From the south, the amphitheatre at Mastaura looks like its counterpart in Rome. But unlike the Colosseum, which is entirely freestanding, this structure takes advantage of the natural topography of the landscape. Its northern part is set into the hillside. Inside, spectators watch from multiple tiers of seating, with the lowest rows reserved for society's elite. All seats had a perfect view of the central arena, where a series of bloody spectacles took place, climaxing with the main act, the Gladiator Games. Sedat uses the scans to help decide where to dig.
Arenanın merkezine doğru oturma sıralarının altındaki tonozlar daralmakta. Daha geniş tonozların, arenanın içine bakan kısımları ise daha dar.
The wider ends of these vaults could be openings in the building's perimeter, and a place to begin his search for the gladiators. Sedat leads his dig team up to the site.
Arkadaşlar 4 sektörde çalışacağız bugün çalışmalarımız.
Like a general marshalling his troops, Sedat delegates locations and tasks to the 45-strong team of archaeologists and excavators.
Çok teşekkür ederim. Güzel bir gün geçirmeniz dileğiyle. Başarılar, teşekkür ederim.
The crew gets to work, exposing this huge structure in the hunt for the people who fought in this arena. How similar were they to the gladiators from the Colosseum in Rome? Sadat heads into the bowels of the amphitheater to continue his search. The mapping of Mastaura's giant arena is now complete. The team's survey data has revealed a void on the amphitheater's perimeter. Excavators have dug a shaft to reach the entrance.
Burası amfiteyatronun dış kenarı ve oradaki dış odaları ilk defa burada keşfedeceğiz.
Lead archaeologist Sadat Akunas climbs down to take the first look.
Şimdi yavaş yavaş bunun üstündeki bu dolgu toprağı bizim almamız lazım. Çünkü yıkılma riski tehlikesi var.
While the excavators hack at the ground overhead, Sadat ventures into the darkness. The gap opens out into a large chamber.
Sağlam şekilde korunmuş vaziyette. 2000 yıl öncesine ait bu duvarlara dokunmak muazzam bir deneyim olması gerekir.
These walls support the built-up southern side of the amphitheater, but they also form their own enclosed room.
Ve odanın içinde nişler var. Tribünlerin altındaki, oturma sıralarının altındaki, kaveyanın altındaki.
Rooms built into the structure prove the amphitheater was designed to be more than just seating for spectators.
Şu anda bu yapının bu bölümünü keşfetmiş olmamız çok önemli. Zeminine ulaştığımız zaman bu odaların oradan bize arkeolojik bulgular gelecektir ve fikrimiz daha netleşecektir.
Every step here brings the team closer to the ancient stars of this arena.
Seyircilerin gelip oturduğu ya da burada amfiteyatroda gladyatör dövüşlerinde kulüpler vardır.
Most gladiators were owned by special training schools that were often built next to amphitheaters, such as the Ludus Magnus beside Rome's Colosseum. Gladiators became the school's property for a set number of years. They could be criminals, enslaved people, even volunteers. After training, they swapped wooden swords for real ones. Whatever they used to be, they were now professional fighters. While excavation continues around the outside, Sadat ventures into the arena to search for evidence of violent gladiatorial combat. 50 miles from Mastaura lies Ephesus. The city was founded by the ancient Greeks and continued to be an important center for centuries during the Roman era. Archaeologist Martin Steskal leads the digs here.
Ephesus was one of the best sites to work at. It's one of the rare cases where a city of that size has never been built over. And this makes archaeology very special here at Ephesus for us archaeologists.
Martin's Austrian Archaeological Institute has been excavating at this ancient city for more than 120 years. The team is currently digging a complex of shops from just after the Roman period. But one of the Institute's most astonishing finds in Ephesus comes from one of the city's cemeteries.
We were excavating in this necropolis to learn more about what life looked like for the ancient population here in Ephesus. And to our big surprise, there were tombstones found that indicated that gladiators were buried in this area.
The tombstones show several different kinds of gladiators. Each one is armed with specific weaponry and armor.
We can see guys in heavy armor with shields, shin guards, helmets, daggers.
The tombstones reveal that gladiators in Ephesus looked the same as ones who fought in the Colosseum, wearing costumes inspired by Rome's violent past. Over hundreds of years, Roman soldiers had fought many rival peoples. each with their own distinctive weapons and combat style. In the amphitheatre, these enemies of Rome inspired distinct gladiator types. Their armors often redesigned to make fights more entertaining. Not all were designed to look like real-life warriors. One type was named the Retiarius and used a net to capture his opponents. Two of the most popular characters were the Thracian and the Murmillo. There were even female gladiators who took to the arena. Many gladiators were enslaved people. Others were volunteers, but all were trained entertainers.
It becomes obvious with these tombstones that the people who died were not ashamed of their profession. They wanted to show who they were during their lifetime.
The popular image of the arena is of two gladiators fighting to the death. But behind these tombstones, the Austrian team has uncovered evidence of the reality of gladiatorial combat. In the necropolis, archaeologists unearthed the remains of 66 young men. Some bear the scars of violent injuries. One skull showed what looked like the mark of a sword. Another had two holes that perfectly fit the prongs of a trident. These wounds were clearly fatal. But more remarkably, some major injuries, like broken limbs, had healed. What do these bones tell us about how gladiators lived and fought?
We have cuts of daggers and swords and other wounds that can clearly be recognized. So it is a very dangerous job to have. On the other hand, they had medical care.
A gladiator who could no longer fight was bad for business. Most contests ended not in death, but submission, allowing both men to live and fight again. Gladiators fought once every few months, and owners provided them with medical care to get the most from their investment.
This was the main income of the owner of a gladiatorial school, the Lanista. This was his main business. So he was traveling also with his school of gladiators and fighting in different arenas.
It is likely these gladiators from Ephesus also went on tour to fight at Mastaura.
We can imagine those gladiators here from Ephesus going from city to city. For example, Mastaura, it's only a ride of a day away from Ephesus. We can absolutely assume that the gladiators from Ephesus also fought there.
Martin heads further into the city to look for evidence of how popular gladiators were. Who watched these games? At the Colosseum in Rome, Barbara Nazzaro and the team of experts assess the extent of the damage to this world-famous structure.
Just with pits sitting on here can make it fall.
They are working to restore an upper level of the Colosseum, where Rome's lower classes sat to watch the games. Air and moisture seep through the porous stone blocks and are rusting the steel pins inside.
La barra in acciaio, corrodendosi, tende ad aumentare il proprio volume di circa 70%.
The embedded pins are slowly levering this ancient structure apart. But the team has a solution.
Il materiale che andiamo in qualche modo a mettere, collegandolo elettricamente con la barra al suo interno, consente praticamente di corrodere questo elemento in zinco.
The corrosion is caused by a process called electrolysis. This zinc insert reacts more readily than steel. If the two are connected, the zinc will corrode and the steel will not, halting the damage to the structure. Art restorer Emiliano Africano has the challenge of inserting these zinc pins and then masking them with a mortar that matches the bare stone.
The problem is to find the right color and the right texture similar at the original materials.
Spatulas in hand, the crew begins the process of making thousands of holes disappear without trace.
This is the right color. Okay, good job, perfect.
The Colosseum is so big that even the simplest task here can turn into a challenge of epic proportions. The upper tier alone could hold tens of thousands of spectators. Gladiatorial shows in Rome were hugely popular. Entry was free to all of its citizens. At the Mastaura Amphitheatre in Turkey, Sadat and his team are hunting for signs of what it was like to spend a day at the Games. The excavators have exposed another chamber on the perimeter similar to the one Sadat explored. Archaeologist Arzu Özver and her team head inside and scrape through the soil, searching for the smallest of clues.
Evet, bir fırça şey.
Bir 4. yüzyıla hatta belki 5. yüzyıla ait.
Arzu believes these fragments of pots could indicate a use for the room.
Kolay gelsin arkadaşlar.
Sadat examines their progress.
Çalışmalar nasıl gidiyor? Bulgular ele geçiyor mu?
Evet, farklı şeyler var.
Roma dönemi ya. Hangi 2. yüzyıl değil mi? 3. yüzyıl, 4. yüzyıl malzemeleri gelmeye başladı.
Evet, karışık, aynen.
Günlük kullanım kapları.
Günlük kullanım kapları.
The pots are typical of those used for food, so Sadat thinks this may have been a fast food stall, selling snacks to thousands of spectators, just as at football games today.
Belli ki burası sosyal, yani amfiteyatronun insanların, seyircilerin ya da buradaki amfiteyatroda görevli kişilerin gelip dinlendikleri bir mekanlar, odalar.
Evet, mola verdikleri.
As the team continues, it builds up an image of the amphitheatre as a social hub, a place for people to see one another as well as the games. In nearby Ephesus, Martin Steskal searches for other ways in which the gladiator games brought people together.
Inscriptions are an extremely important source for us archaeologists because they bring us very close to the people at that time.
The ruins here bear thousands of inscriptions. They are a treasure trove of information about life in the city.
We see here an official document and inscriptions carved into stone.
Martin finds a curious inscription on a plinth that once stood in the main square.
We can read here Philovedioi, Philoploi. This means the arms-loving Philovedio. This is a fan club. This is a fan club cheering for the gladiators.
This inscription is not a mere piece of scratched graffiti. It's evidence of organized support.
This clearly shows us that they were omnipresent here in the city, the gladiator. They could find them on tombstones, on oil lamps. We have multiple graffiti. The Romans were really obsessed with gladiators. They were in people's mind all the time.
Games brought a sense of community, free entertainment that was a welcome break from everyday life and enjoyed by rich and poor alike. Martin heads to the famous theatre of Ephesus to find out why Romans were so hooked on the bloody spectacle of gladiatorial combat. In Mastaura, Sadat wants to discover what made the gladiatorial games so appealing, and he's searching the arena itself.
Amfiteyatronun tam ortasındaki dövüşlerin yapıldığı arena kısmının üzerindeyiz şu.
He wants to find out if Mastaura shares a feature with Rome's Colosseum. Secret passageways and hidden ramps beneath the arena floor to allow for dramatic entrances.
Bazılarının içine su doldurup savaşları yaptırıyorlar. Bazılarının yerin altından aslanlar, gladiatörler, vahşi hayvanlar çıkıp savaştırıyorlar.
Beneath some amphitheaters, the Romans built a network of tunnels and rooms called a hypogeum. This is where fighters and animals were held, ready for their grand entrance. Using a system of pulleys and ropes, enslaved men hoisted the stars of the show up to the level of the arena. And the animals and fighters could emerge from specially built scenery, giving the games a touch of pure theatre.
Amacımız arenanın zeminini bulmak.
Uncovering the original arena floor poses a challenge. Shifting just 1 foot of soil would require the removal of 300 tons of earth. It would take years. Digging alone isn't enough, so Sadat turns to technology.
Arkeoloji disiplinler arası yapılan bir çalışmadır. Biz bu ekibin, kaz ekibimizin içinde pek çok uzmanlar var. Bunların bir tanesi de jeofizik uzmanları.
Nuadan Sayin from Istanbul University arrives to conduct a magnetometer survey.
2180.
Sadat and his team divide the 100-foot wide arena into a grid of evenly spaced parallel lines. 2 sensors on the device take separate readings of the Earth's magnetic field. And the subtle differences between them show up any objects or structures buried in the ground below. They carry the detector across the arena floor, scanning the space back and forth, line by line, hunting for hidden treasures. The work is painstaking, but the survey team doesn't flag under the blazing sun.
Approximately 25 years I am a geophysicist. I am used to this weather. No problem.
As the scanning continues, the rest of the crew takes a well-earned break. Even in 100-degree heat, sweet hot tea is the drink of choice. Local team member Mehmet İnceoğlu makes sure the tea urn is ever ready.
Kazı Başkanımız Sedat Akkurnaz hocamızla beraber eski zamanlardaki gibi burayı tekrar eski şenliklerine getireceğimize inanıyoruz.
Mehmet has a very personal reason for wanting to find out about the history of this site. His family has farmed this land for generations.
Herhalde dedem görseydi çok mutlu olurdu.
Once the scan is complete, Nuadan and Sadat examine the results
Çok teşekkür ederim hocam.
to discover if a hypogeum lies hidden below.
Evet. Amfiteyatro. Yapılmış şöyle elips ya. Aslında bu şu duvar. Yani bu elipsin ortasından geçiyor muhtemelen.
Each scanned line across the arena has been stitched together to create a 2-dimensional map of what lies below the soil. Such scans are never pin sharp, but as Nuadan reveals,
Başka şey de var, fotoğraflarda var hocam.
there are clear shapes beneath the surface.
1,5-2 metreden itibaren başlayan ve aşağı doğru giden ve devamlı da olan takım yapılar görünüyor hocam.
The scan shows the arena floor is around 5 feet beneath the current ground level. And beneath that, an arrangement of walls, potentially the remains of a basement level or hypogeum. Just like the one beneath the Colosseum in Rome. For Sadat, this is a huge step forward in understanding the inner workings of this amphitheater.
Bence bu duvar çok muhteşem bir şey. Mutluluk verici haberler çok güzel ve muhtemelen bunlar bir hipojen yani yeraltı odaları olabilir.
Mastaura's amphitheater appears to have underground structures below its arena floor, capable of creating jaw-dropping drama and spectacle. Why would this small provincial town build an amphitheater that could produce theatrics comparable to Rome's mighty Colosseum? Sadat believes the reason is linked to the amphitheater's size.
izlenimlerimize, düşüncelerimize göre yaklaşık 13-14 belki 15 bin kişilik bir kapasiteye sahipti.
Based on the scale of the ancient settlement, the amphitheatre's capacity almost matches the entire population of Mastaura. Sadat thinks this is a crucial clue to how the gladiatorial games worked.
Kentin nüfusundan daha fazlası ve bölgesel olarak bu amfiteyatroya insanların ziyaret için, eğlence için geldiğini.
Although Mastaura was a small town, the region boasted a large population concentrated in famous cities such as Ephesus.
Kentler var, daha büyük kentler var. Orada olmayan amfiteyatroyu burada inşa edilmiş ve bu amfiteyatro tabii ki ilk izlenimlerimiz, düşüncelerimiz bölgenin cazibe merkezi haline getirmiş burayı.
Grand entertainment venues like Mastaura were designed not just for local crowds, but to draw in people from a huge surrounding region. What made fans travel so many miles to witness the violence of gladiatorial combat? Turkey's ancient Mastaura was far from the only Roman town to stage lavish gladiatorial games inside an impressive amphitheatre. Another lies 130 miles south of Rome, Pompeii. In 79 CE, the violent eruption of Mount Vesuvius killed thousands of people here and covered the city in 20 feet of ash and stone. This lair preserved a perfect picture of Roman life, including one of the oldest amphitheatres in the empire.
There's a sense of awe coming in through the tunnel as you're coming down into the arena. You get the sense that gladiators would have suddenly found themselves surrounded by spectators and the clamor. It must have been quite an imposing experience.
Archaeologist Jeanette Plummer-Sires investigates how sometimes these passions spilled over.
This painting was found in a nearby house, and based on these arches, it's clearly the same structure.
In 59 CE, a huge fight broke out between spectators here. On one side were the locals, on the other, visitors from the nearby town of Nuceria.
The thing is that it seems to be more fighting outside of the amphitheater than inside of it. It's just a scene of absolute chaos. So it's clearly depicting a huge riot outside of the amphitheater.
The fighting around this amphitheater brings to mind more modern imagery.
Despite the historical setting, this kind of sports-related fighting is something that we might see today. They were clearly hooligans.
The fighting was so savage that the government in Rome banned Pompeii from holding games for 10 years. Jeanette believes this brutal street fight shows that the popularity of the games went beyond spectacle and into tribalism.
Gladiatorial fights managed to bring in people from all across the region, but it was much more than that. Fans would travel to see their favorite gladiators, much like modern rival spectators today.
The very fact a person commissioned the fresco shows this episode was hugely significant to them.
Normally in houses, you get frescoes depicting mythological scenes or legendary events, not a local brawl. So somebody in this town really cared about this event.
Gladiator games were not just entertainment. They could be a source of identity and civic pride. In Mastaura, Sadat searches a ruined structure beside the amphitheater for clues to how important the games were to this small town. Buried in the soil and undergrowth, he finds a smooth stone tile.
Yine ön yüzü pürüzsüz ince bir kaliteli mermer. Arka yüzünde ise duvardaki harçları görüyoruz. Harçları bu şekilde.
These are marble wall tiles. They even have decorative detailing.
Bu mermeri kazıyarak yapıyorlar bunu. Mermerin üzerini ince ince böyle kazıyor, yontuyorlar.
This now collapsed marble-clad structure also boasted a mosaic floor.
Yapımızın zemini mozaiklerle kaplı, oldukça büyük bir yapı.
The floor stretches for at least 45 feet. It allows Sadat to piece together what downtown Mastawra looked like 2,000 years ago.
Bu bulunduğumuz alan ise bir kamu alanı. Yan tarafta hamam, arkada agora yapıları var. Muhtemelen Mastawra halkı kent meclisi buraya gösterişli bir kentin onuruna yakışan bir yapı inşa etmişler.
The team plans to restore the mosaic as part of its mission to revive ancient Mastawra. Through the dust and grime, Sadat now sees a bigger picture of how this area was used.
Lüks eğlence harcamaları yapmak istiyor. Belki de o insanların kullanacağı kalitede, lükslükte binalar tasarladılar.
These neighboring buildings combined to form an entertainment district.
Tabii ki bütün yapı komplekslerinin hepsi Roma hamamı, bu mozaikli yapı ve arkadaki amfiteyatro birbirine bağlantılı yapılar. İnsanlar hepsini bir arada kullanıyordu bunların.
The gladiatorial games weren't just a part of public life. They could help a town thrive. They drew large crowds and generated wealth. But one question remains. Did the fighters in the arena share the enthusiasm of the baying crowd? In the Roman metropolis of Ephesus, Martin Steskal enters the city's main entertainment venue to investigate if a gladiator's life was anything more than violence and death.
This is the great theater of Ephesus. This is the place where the people of Ephesus went when they wanted to be entertained, to watch Greek drama, listen to concerts, and where the gladiators fought.
The theatre was built in 250 BCE by the Greeks. When Romans took over the cities of the East, they often adapted Greek theatres into 360-degree amphitheatres to seat twice as many people. The Ephesus theatre kept its original shape. And in the 2nd century CE, Emperor Trajan instead added a third tier, increasing the seating capacity to a staggering 22,000. Gladiators, individuals who were little more than enslaved, fought here in front of crowds bigger than most modern music concerts.
This is the contradiction that is existing. They had a very low level, but they were admired by the people. The gladiators were the rock stars of their time. They were highly appreciated for their fighting skills, and they showed values like strength, fearlessness, and discipline, all considered Roman.
Successful gladiators could reach dizzying heights of stardom in the arena, becoming cult figures. Stalls even sold figurines of the fighters, merchandise inspired by the stars of the games. Even the most powerful man in the world wanted to be a gladiator. Emperor Commodus himself participated in over 700 games. Unsurprisingly, Commodus always won. His gladiatorial adversaries feared punishment if they fought back. Martin thinks the key to the appeal of the arena for the gladiator rests in one of the discovered tombstones, dedicated to a gladiator named Palumbos.
We can see him in his workwear, his fighting gear. He wears shin guards, we see his shield, his helmet, but more importantly, there's a palm branch, and we see that he's characterized as a winner. He's been victorious in the arena.
The inscription below the carving explains the tombstone was commissioned by his partner, a woman called Hymnis.
This picture tells us a lot about his life, also beyond his life as a gladiator. He had a partner and he had a life also outside the gladiatorial school, and that he was a loved person and appreciated. It's really great that we have a name here because this brings us very close to the individual, and this gives the story a completely different touch.
As a gladiator, Palumbus of Ephesus had no rights as a Roman citizen. But by stepping into the arena, he could achieve something every Roman dreamed of: to be remembered for eternity.
It didn't matter whether you were of low status or of high status. You wanted to be remembered as a person. For a Roman, life ended when you were forgotten. The efforts Hymnis, his wife, took were absolutely successful. We still think about Palumbus and talk about him. I think he couldn't even expect that 2,000 years later we were still talking about him.
In Mastara, as in Ephesus, gladiators were the stars of public life.
Bu gladyatörler işin odağında, tıpkı futbolda futbolcular odağında ama onun etrafında büyük bir sektör oluşması gibi.
The gladiators were under stricter contracts than today's football megastars, but the relative fame they could achieve was the same.
Bu da antik dönemde de gladyatörlerin mesela sıfatları var. Efsaneleşmiş gladyatörler var. Boğan, öldüren, kan kusturan.
For the gladiators who succeeded here in Mastara, who wowed the crowds and became famous names, there was even a shot at the big time.
Bu gladyatörler çok başarılı olduğu zaman bir üst yerlere, mesela Roma'daki Kolezyum'a kadar gidip oralarda dövüşler yapabiliyorlar.
The lowest members of society could step into the arena anywhere in the Roman Empire. And with the right skills to survive and entertain, could make it all the way to the Colosseum. In Rome, at this iconic arena, Emiliano and his restoration team finish off the mortar filling and ensure each point is fitted with a special zinc insert.
Now I'm going to put inside the zinco. Now you can put the molder inside the hole to create the connection.
These repairs are almost complete and will prevent the cracks from spreading, protecting this section of the Colosseum for another generation.
Now the problem is solved, but we have to monitor it in the future, but for now it's perfect.
The model of the games, perfected in this mighty arena, was exported to city after city and region after region. As far away as Turkish Mastara, experts are still uncovering evidence of a phenomenon that defines the Roman Empire. The games were an entertainment industry, a source of sports tourism. And the traveling crowd could be drawn by a sense of belonging as much as bloodlust. Gladiators were slaves to the games, but had lives outside the arena, and achieved a celebrity that lasted beyond death. One aspect the Hollywood epics have right is the sheer power and appeal gladiators held in the public imagination. An appeal that, despite all the violence and brutality, remains to this day.